The call of adventure. Another mysterious land to explore. Another brothel. Look at this. This says the Great Kingdom of Placeholdria. That's never a good sign. I don't think this world's finished. Those settlements seem to have been plopped down randomly. The rivers flow in straight lines, and there's absolutely no geography or culture to speak of whatsoever. Do you know where we are? Birmingham. It's even worse than that. We're in a shoddily designed D&D homebrew setting. Greetings, adventurer. I am NPC. Would you like a quest? You, sir, are a walking eldritch horror. Yeah. I've tracked a Jabberwock for a fortnight through the Feywild, and that is the most unnerving thing I have ever seen. Greetings, adventurer. I am NPC. Would you like a quest? Can we leave? Guys, please don't leave. I know it's a bit rough around the edges, but I promise the king and all the royalty, they have a very, very interesting and deep backstory. Oh yeah? What's his name? King Steve? Hello, adventurers, DMs, and world builders. Welcome to Grey Wolf Adventuring. Today, we're diving deep into one of the most creative aspects of Dungeons & Dragons and creative storytelling as a whole, crafting your very own homebrew setting. This doesn't have to be Dungeons & Dragons specific. The information and advice here is just as relevant to any tabletop role-playing game, creative writing project, or fantasy work you wish to navigate. So stick around and feel free to use it in any context you need. To completely nerd out on specifics for a moment, this video isn't about creating a D&D homebrew campaign, but that one is. A setting is the location, societies and cultures you and your party will explore, whilst a campaign are the events they encounter and the repercussions of the decisions your players' characters make. So, if you've ever thought about creating a unique world for your players or readers to explore, but don't quite know where to start, don't worry. I'll guide you through it step by step, creating a setting that's immersive, unique, and playable. Ready? Let's roll. Part 1. The foundation of your world. Every great setting starts with a strong foundation. Think of this as the very skeleton of your world. Firstly, decide on the tone and genre. Is your world dark and gritty, akin to a post-apocalyptic wasteland? Or is it high fantasy with epic noble kingdoms and powerful magic? Maybe it's a blend of two, or something completely unique, like a surreal floating island archipelago held aloft with steampunk technology. The most original story worlds take elements from multiple genres. These tropes help your readers and players to understand the context of the creative work you've produced, subconsciously sharing with them the social relationship dynamics and societal rules. Here's a breakdown of some notable genres, along with related examples, subgenres, and themes to help inspire your homebrew worlds. High fantasy, a genre depicting epic tales of good versus evil, magical worlds, and larger-than-life heroes and villains. High fantasy is usually set in an entirely fictional world with its own rules, history, and creatures. Media examples are, in books, The Lord of the Rings by J.R.R. Tolkien, The Wheel of Time by Robert Jordan, and The Stormlight Archive by Brandon Sanderson. Movies and TV are The Hobbit trilogy, Game of Thrones with a dark twist on high fantasy, and The Chronicles of Narnia. In games, we have the Dragon Age series, World of Warcraft, and Elden Ring. Related genres is the sword and sorcery genre, focusing on individual heroics over an epic scale, like Conan the Barbarian. Also, the heroic fantasy, with an optimistic tone and heroic deeds, like the Belgariad by David Eddings. Steampunk noir, a blend of the steampunk aesthetic, Victorian-inspired technology powered by steam, with the gritty, shadowy, and morally ambiguous feel of noir storytelling. Media examples are, in books, The Difference Engine by William Gibson and Bruce Sterling, and Bone Shaker by Cherie Priest. In movies and TV, The City of Lost Children, The Prestige, and Penny Dreadful. In games, there is Dishonored, The Thief series, and frostpunk. Related genres are gaslamp fantasy, a similar aesthetic but with a stronger focus on magic and whimsy, Jonathan Strange and Mr. Normal by Susanna Clarke, and dieselpunk, similar to the steampunk but with a 1920s, 1950s technological and cultural vibe, like Bioshock. Cosmic horror, a genre emphasising existential dread, humanity's insignificance, and the incomprehensible nature of the universe. It often includes terrifying, ancient beings beyond human understanding. Media examples are, in books, The Call of Cthulhu and other works by H.P. Lovecraft, and Annihilation by Jeff Vandermeer. In movies and TV, The Thing, The Lighthouse, and Event Horizon. In games, there are Bloodborne, The Darkest Dungeon, Call of Cthulhu, Dark Corners of the Earth. Related genres is Gothic horror, focusing more on decaying settings and personal terror like Dracula, and weird fiction with blends of horror, science fiction, and fantasy with surreal and bizarre elements like The Ballad of Black Tom by Victor LaValle. Urban fantasy, combining magical elements with modern day settings, often focusing on hidden worlds or supernatural occurrences in otherwise familiar urban environments. Media examples in books are The Dresden Files by Jim Butcher, American Gods, and Neverwhere by Neil Gaiman. Movies and TV shows are Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Constantine, and Bright. With games, there is Vampire, The Masquerade, Shadowrun, and World of Darkness. Related genres are supernatural thrillers, focusing on suspense and mystery, like The Sixth Sense, and dark fantasy, which blurs the line between fantasy and horror, like the Witcher series. Part 2. Establishing a central theme. Once you've decided on a genre, you can then ask, what are the central themes that will inspire your world? These could be love, redemption, forgiveness, coming of age, revenge, good versus evil, bravery, or hardship. A story about love, redemption, or forgiveness could feature two warring factions and the struggle of those being forced to pick a side. Bravery and hardship could embody a land that is recovering from a giant magical catastrophe, or a realm where cruel and powerful gods walk amongst mortals. These themes will guide your storytelling and give players a sense of what to expect, whilst helping them create characters that naturally fit into your world. Again, combining multiple often works best, so pick one or two strong themes that you'll enjoy exploring and will anchor your world realistically. Part 3. Geography and cultures. Now we've addressed the most nebulous aspects, let's bring your world to life with geography and cultures. Having a good understanding of these elements will make your setting feel tangible and lived in. Start with a rough map. It doesn't have to be a masterpiece, just basic land masses, oceans, and key geographical locations like forests, rivers, lakes, and mountains. To make this feel more realistic, try to contemplate where these would actually be. Mountains don't just appear randomly, not by unmagical means anyway. They usually follow a linear range due to the Earth's tectonic plates, similar to islands. Rivers and lakes too relate to their environment. They form at the bottom of valleys, steadily meandering their way out to sea. These are often the location of significant settlements and fortifications, as they act as natural barriers and navigable trade routes. Think of the twins in Game of Thrones, or the City of London in the real world. For a deeper guide on map making, follow this link. You should contemplate how to best incorporate the genres and themes into the landscape and cultures of your world. If it's a grim, dark fantasy setting, ensure to include some torrential rain, thick mist, dead trees, and sodden muddy fields. If you've gone with a post-apocalyptic feel, make sure to show the players that the environment is just as hostile and unforgiving as the people that inhabit it. Think about including environmental storytelling or notable physical descriptions that the player's characters encounter, like a forest that has been ravaged by wildfire, or a series of caves, its air thick with the spores of the oversized fungi that inhabit it. After that, you can now think about how said geography shapes the people and cultures of your world. For example, a desert might be inhabited by nomadic tribes who have to travel often as not to deplete the finite resources, whilst a bustling port city could thrive on trade. Every world needs people, or creatures living in it. Try to create cultures with distinct traditions, traits, and conflicts. Maybe one kingdom thrives on industrialization, whilst another is more traditional, clinging to ancient magic. The best way to begin all of this is to start in a single location, ideally the starting location you envisioned for your campaign, and then steadily expand outwards. This means that you'll be inspired to create places and events that are relevant in their immediate context. Rather than arbitrarily creating 5 cities and their ruling houses, you should instead start with one location, and then once that has sufficient depth, you already know what you need to create next, like another settlement to trade with, or the surrounding geology and geography that is the base of their economy. Remember though, we're not writing the campaign, so don't start going down the narrative path just yet. Try to think in terms of a sandbox rather than a railroad. If all this has made sense so far, do you feel like leaving a like? Maybe hitting the subscribe and bell button whilst you're there? I just rolled a 3, so I understand if that was not very convincing. Part 4. Adding unique elements. What makes your world truly yours? By adding a unique twist like floating cities, sentient storms, or ancient ruins imbued by magic that warp reality, these details will make your setting unique and unforgettable. They will inspire your adventurers to travel further afield and will keep your readers engaged. When contemplating the physical environment, consider what natural or historical events have shaped the world. Perhaps a volcano or magical explosion rended a continent in half, the ramifications of which are still being dealt with. Perhaps the constellations in the sky shift, dictating the power of certain gods. On a more localized level, maybe a horrific battle was fought close to a settlement, and now the area is considered cursed or hallowed ground. Think about how a people's generational dependence and interaction with an environment molds them. This could be based on rare materials, magical energy, or unique trade routes. These would ultimately create subcultures and factions. These groups, like guilds, religious sects, or rebel forces, are manifestations of the environment and history of the land, adding layers of intrigue. Part 5. History and Lore. Every world has a past, and history is what gives it depth and weight. Try to start with a singular major event, contextualizing it around the landscape and cultures that you've already created. Once this has sufficient depth, you can then create a basic timeline, focusing on other events like political events and battles to wars, natural disasters, and the rise and fall of empires. Don't overdo it though, and only share what is contextually relevant with your players. For instance, a cleric who has lived their whole life in a monastery wouldn't know the inner workings of the capital city's criminal underworld or the nuances of the trade relations. By sharing this with only relevant players, you don't overwhelm and disinterest those that have nothing to instigate with that information. By doing this, you also instigate character-driven role-playing moments, as when the information becomes relevant, the players can converse with each other, sharing information and crafting plans in character, which is the most rewarding experience to view from a dungeon master's perspective. With this, they're organically interacting with the story world without the momentum-stopping, immersion-breaking moments of asking the DM questions, then repeating, "I share this with the party." You want the lore you create to have depth and context with the story and world. Imagine the history you've created as a deep lake that the players can explore in any direction they want. They don't want to be leaping from one shallow lore puddle to another. Now you've created a basic timeline, you can then choose when the start of the campaign and the present day is. This might sound obvious, but think about it. Do you want to start your story on the day of a gigantic cataclysm, or 100 years into the future, when the event's ramifications are still in the culture's consciousness, but are far away enough to have the beginnings of hearsay? This leads perfectly into the creation of myths, legends, and folklore. Establishing these will further help shape the world and cultures you've already created, as well as facilitate amazing roleplay opportunities as your players interact with NPCs. These can be localized, only being uttered in certain regions, or could span the entire setting. Maybe it's a prophecy, a lost artifact, or an epic tale of an ancient hero. These add depth and authenticity into your world, making it more exciting for your players to explore. You could also contemplate red herrings and falsehoods that are widely believed. Perhaps the rumour of a vicious werewolf in the town hides the fact that the true killer is in fact a Rakshasa. This stops the quest from being a simple A to B story. It also gives the players a sense of intrigue when, after a successful perception or investigation check, they discover the fur found at the crime scene is in fact orange rather than brown. This may even lead them to interact with more NPCs and locations as they investigate the irregularities of the investigation.
Part 6. Magic, Technology and Rules.
Next up are the systems that govern your world. This includes magic, technology, and any unique game design. In terms of magic, is it rare, dangerous, or common and practical? Maybe it's tied to specific resources like crystals, ley lines, or its use is costly to the user by diminishing their energy or hit points. You should contemplate how magic fits into daily life. Like I said earlier, it could be that all humanoids are magic users, having access to cantrips. There could have even been a magical cataclysm where it disappeared from the world and your players are the first to wield it in generations. The use of magic could also be kept from the people, controlled and used for the wants and desires of a political and social elite. This would inspire a solidarity of class and give your party a cause as they fight the status quo. This could also be the same for technology. If your world includes advanced technology, figure out how it interacts with magic and the society. You could even include technology which is a trope of the genre you're creating in. Your players could traverse the world in giant steampunk airships, or explore the terrifyingly cosmic depth of the ocean in magically powered mech suits. Lastly, establish any unique rules. Maybe dragons don't fly in your world, or undead creatures are immune to fire. This is where the true individuality of your story world shines, so don't be afraid to be ambitious and creative. The only thing to keep in mind is to make sure these rules are consistent, as this keeps the players from breaking the immersion into your world. With this being a homebrew setting, the players are going into this with little or no context, so it's imperative that you communicate in your session 0 or in the world building what the rules are. For instance, if the dead are immune to fire damage, tell or show them overtly, as this will help them interact with this unknown world they're creating. If you plan on implementing an in-game change or twist, like dragons somehow learning to fly, make sure the players have the opportunity to figure that out in good time. You'll instigate roleplay moments if a player's character witnesses a dragon taking flight for the first time, and a player will feel like they're the centre of the story, as opposed to a passive observer in your world.
Part 7. Tying it back to the players.
Now you've got all the pieces, it's time to contemplate the people you'll be sharing this world with, your players or readers. As much as this creation has been manifested from the depths of your own imagination, they will be interacting with it too, so it would be wise to think about how they fit into all of this. Rather than thinking, oh great, now I have to change what I've spent ages creating, instead just collaborate with your players. By allowing them to create a small social circle for their character, they'll feel invested and confident interacting with NPCs and the setting. This also helps you out too, as you'll more than likely find a place for them that is already in your world, but then you haven't had to invent the patrons of every tavern in the area. With all this being said, don't feel the need to have every minute piece of information about your setting before the campaign begins. It might be an even smarter idea to start small, only fleshing out the immediate vicinity that the players will start in and the larger world building information that most humanoids that inhabit the world would already know. If no one in the small rural town the campaign starts off in would know who the ruler was 1,000 years ago, you don't need to either. Not just yet, anyway. You can expand on your world building as your players explore, taking into account their needs and motivations. This is where you can plant plot hooks that continually tie your players into the world. Maybe they begin searching for a lost relic, only to find the last owner was a relative of theirs. Or perhaps they try to stop a rising threat, but need the favour from one of the NPCs their players have created. Remember, You may have created the setting, but your players will shape the story. Let their actions influence the world. The best settings feel alive because they continually evolve with the game. And with that, congratulations! You are now all set to begin creating your own fantasy worlds for your players and readers to explore. Ultimately, homebrewing and world building is all about creativity and collaboration. Don't be afraid to experiment and let your players help shape the world too. Thank you so much for watching to the end of the video. You are a hero just for that. If it has been at all insightful, I would really appreciate it if you could leave me a like and send this video to your party's DM or any other creative world builder. Finally, this video here features tips on how to introduce players into your homebrew campaigns, whilst this video talks about the pitfalls of becoming too attached to the creative vision you had in mind. Now, grab some friends, some dice, and together create an epic tale for the ages. Adventure awaits.